Shalom, this is Danya Greenberg. Shalom means peace. And this week, in this week's Torah portion called Toledot, we are talking about shalom. And the reason that I have my phone pulled together, because I wanted to show you this really cool search function on our app. Because I love when you're looking for a specific thing that God is speaking to you about, like you hear that little still small voice saying, there's something in here you should look at. And I don't know if it disturbs you, but what happens in the story this week that Jewish people are reading, it's the story of Rebecca and Isaac, the early years of their marriage, and her pregnancy with the two boys, Esau and Jacob. And there's a very interesting course of events. And if you read through the Bible, just read through the story, you'll find that that she cries out to Adonai. She cries out to God when she feels like this rumbling inside her. And the Lord tells her that she's going to have twins. Now remember, Sarah's gone by now. And she inquires of the Lord because she's like, what is happening to me? And realize she doesn't have a mother-in-law there. She doesn't have Sarah there anymore. She's the mother of her household, and Abraham's married a new wife. And so her and Isaac are trying to figure things out. And so God speaks directly to Isaac and confirms the covenant after. But first, it's the wife who prays in this story. And I always find this story really interesting because it's really about sibling rivalry, which is an issue that is dealt with throughout this parsha. So there's sibling rivalry between the two boys. Then there's rivalry between Isaac and the foreigners that he's living among for wells. And it actually leads to a sequence of what the wells are called as he's struggling to redig his father's wells and make a name for himself. And it ends with this covenant that is made between the people of that land and Isaac. When the word, now this is the first time the word is the word shalom, and I've got an olive branch because I want to remind you that we're talking about peace today. And peace between you and other people is a sign of your relationship with God. If you're at war with the people around you all the time and you're constantly aggravated as a believer and everything around you is the fault of evil around you, just realize that you have to be accountable before God for your behavior. Can't control other people's behavior. The Bible is a book about self-editing, self-control. So here's where it shows up in here. It says here, we've clearly seen that Adonai has been with you. This is what Abimelech is saying, Abimelech. So it says, so we say, let there be an agreement between us and you, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we haven't touched you, and just as we did nothing to you but good, and sent you away in shalom. You are now blessed by Adonai. So having peace and prosperity is a symbol that God is with you. So why is that a symbol of God being with you? So I want you to know that the reason I was so excited to talk to you about peace this week is because the word peace shows up in the Bible before the word shalom. We use the word shalom and peace separately in this Bible, in the Tree of Life version of the Bible, right? In this Bible. And I'll tell you, we describe peace as wholeness, complete, restoration, peace. So like when Yeshua says, my peace I give you, my peace I leave with you, that means we're to be peace ambassadors for God. Meaning that people will recognize that God's with us by how peaceful we are with one another. And that doesn't mean we don't have conflicts. It means that we go to the Lord for an answer and let the Lord bless us, and He will fight for us. He's the one that fights our battles. He tells us where to dig wells when it's time to dig wells. He tells us when to where to walk and when to make decisions, because He's a God of order. He's a God of peace. So the first time the word peace is in most Bibles is at a really critical juncture that I just wanted to point out. And that's at a few chapters earlier, when God is cutting a covenant with Abraham. He says to him in here, do not fear, Abraham. I am your shield, your very great reward. It goes on to say, after he does this blood covenant with Abraham and cuts these animals in two, and the fire pot and the torch go down it. It says, he says, I am going to judge the nation that they will serve. Afterward, they will go out with many possessions, but you, in other words, he's talking about the fact that his children are going, they're going to have generations that walk with God, and they're going to have generations that fall away from God. He said, but you will come to your fathers in peace. So why would our translators use the word peace there, but use the word shalom when it's people, a human? Why would God say, I'm going to let you go to your fathers in peace? And then in the Bible, it says that Avimelech, or Abimelech, as most people call him, that he would say that I'm striking a covenant of shalom with you. Because in our translation, we want to make it really clear that peace after you're dead, like rest in peace, right? Realize that God promised to let him rest. That's the kind of peace. That's one of the words that shalom means. One of the meanings of shalom is to be at peace. In other words, there's no more work, there's no more striving, there's no more contending for your faith. You will go to your fathers in peace. So rest in peace has meaning in our society. But to say that you go to your fathers in shalom is an active relationship. Shalom is for action and forward momentum. Can you understand the difference between that? So you can make peace with the past, but you have to be in shalom now about your past, your present, and your future when you're walking with God. Shalom is an act of your will to walk in the peace and understanding that God is with you now in your current state, and he's going to be with you in your future. That's why when we get to, and believe it or not, so the word Shabbat shows up for the first time way early on, before even the second chapter in Genesis. It's in the first chapter of Genesis, that Shabbat, the seventh day, is a day of rest, right? When you rest eternally, you can call that peace. The work's over. However, if you want active, forward momentum peace, I want you to think about how important it is to say Shabbat Shalom when you see somebody on Shabbat. Because we say that because we're at peace with one another, because that's where the presence of God is. So peace is security in God's presence being in the situation. So when one human being says to the other, I leave you in peace, the other responds, my peace, shalom, shalom. So that's a really important part of understanding why sibling rivalry is so destructive. So I was looking, as I said, in our Bible app, and I just want to encourage you to look at one more thing. I'm going to wrap this up really quick. You'll notice that in the book of Romans, it says something really hard in Romans. Romans 9, 10, and 11 are often very misunderstood if you don't recognize that peace on earth is really what the Bible is about. The Bible is about you being at peace with God and at peace with the people that you live near, right? And so in order to extend that olive branch to somebody, you have to believe that they're extending an olive branch back to you. And so in this very difficult story of sibling rivalry, if you go on and look in your search function in your app, you'll recognize that Romans 9, 10, 11, Paul quotes that he's talking about how God chose the Jewish people, and that, what's the use of being Jewish? Except that they were entrusted with the words of God. The Jewish people have brought you the Bible, and through centuries of walking with God and falling away, and walking with God and falling away, his word has been preserved by the Jewish people. So when you read in Romans 9, 10, and 11, and you hear Paul crying out to God, right? In the middle of that, he quotes a verse in Malachi where it says, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. And I want to make something very clear to you. He's quoting out of the book of Malachi, which was written during the time of the temple being rebuilt in 2 Chronicles. So I just want you to know that at the end of the Jewish Bible, and Malachi is the way the Christian Bible is ordered right before the New Testament, but at the end of the writing of the prophets, you're going to hear the prophet asking them, who are you to mock God? And why are you falling away from your service to show God that you love him? God didn't start off hating Esau. You follow the path. Esau didn't choose God. He didn't choose to honor God. He didn't choose to honor God. Did his mom maybe have something to do with it because the fathers each picked a kid they loved? Yeah, don't ever do that to your kids. Don't ever pick one child over the other. I want to just share a quick, because when you do, the child that doesn't feel loved, the child that you don't know how your life is going to play out, just make every choice you can to be at peace with God and at peace with one another and to be everything God called you to be. In our family promise, with me and my kids, these are just the stuff I've taught my children. But in promise number 4, it says, 3, 4, and 5, I love it. Each child is a gift from God, and together we're better than a team. We're a family. Number 4, each person is unique in our family, and we choose to customize our family according to the gifts and calling of God in our lives. Realize that if Esau was the hunter and Esau was the one that brought game, if he had served his brother, and his mother had encouraged him to serve his younger brother, we might not have the problems we have today. In the Bible, you are always taught to lead by serving. So maybe go back and listen to what God told her about the 2 boys inside her, and ask yourself, if you were a mother and you had 2 sons, and God told you, well, the older's going to serve the younger, maybe, just maybe, if you'd grown up your whole life with God and walking with God and had people that were older and wiser around to help you learn how to be a good parent, first of all, you wouldn't pit one child against the other and play favorites. But secondly, you wouldn't try to make God's word to you come true. You'd ask God, what does it mean when you tell me that the older will serve the younger? Because I will tell you, as the eldest child, I've served my family the best way I knew my whole life. And older children do serve, because you can't lead and be godly and not care about the ones younger than you and the ones that come up after you, because you're supposed to be an example. And being an example is being a servant. So I know that Esau made bad decisions and he didn't choose God. There's lots of people that choose to walk away from God. But you can be a leader to your family. Maybe you weren't the eldest, maybe you're not the youngest, but you can be vital and important to your family by serving them and raising your children to love each other and walking at peace with as many people as you can around you, because that shows that God is with you. Have a great day.
I call heaven and earth to witness against you today.